No surprise anal.
Yeah, so don't surprise anybody with
Please.
anal. No surprise fingers in the ass.
Hi, my name is Nicoletta Heidegger, and I am a licensed marriage and family therapist and sexologist specializing in sex therapy, and I'm also the host of the Sluts and Scholars podcast. Really excited to be joined today by Casey and Kylie.
Hi, I am Casey Kisses. I'm an award-winning adult performer. I've been in the industry since 2016. I've done pretty much everything from performing to cam modeling and directing as well.
And my name is Kylie LeBeau. I'm an adult actress and cam model. I started camming in 2018 and I started doing professional scenes in 2020. And I'm really excited to be here. I love kink and everything in between.
Yes, so today we are going to be talking about the benefits or therapeutic benefits of BDSM. And so for folks out there listening, if you have no idea what that is, I'm sure there's some great intro videos, but basically BDSM is an acronym that stands for bondage and discipline, dominance and submission, sadism and masochism. Often people use this kind of broad term of kink as well. So today we're going to be talking about kind of like why do this, why it's maybe fun and pleasurable, and how it can actually help and improve your life, not just sexually, but otherwise as well. So I'd love to hear maybe Kylie from you first. How would you define kink and BDSM? Like, what does it mean to you?
So in my opinion, kink, it's a spectrum. To me, it's a discovery or an exploration of your sexual desires. And to some, it can be taboo, I guess, in a sense. But in my opinion, it's exploring your submissive side as well as your dominant side. I'm a switch, so I'm quite fluid. So yeah, everyone's definition is quite different when it comes to kink, so that's mine. But yeah, what's your definition?
I basically think that it's exactly what that is. It's exploring your kinks. It's everything from being on top and switching to the bottom sometimes to pegging and strapping all the way to choking and, just kind of exploring those. At least that's what it is for us, for me anyways.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times when people hear kink and BDSM, if they haven't sort of explored that before, they think like, oh, it needs to be aggressive, it needs to be painful, it's like, dungeons and chains and whips, and it can be all those fun things, but it can also be a lot of other things. So I kind of define it even more broadly for folks as like just giving yourself permission to expand the definition of pleasure and sexuality and to kind of explore different parts of yourself and different sensations. It's a lot of sensation play and just kind of exploring those shadow parts of oneself as well. So I think it's just a lot of like permission to be creative and explore, and that's kind of how I define it. And so there definitely, like you said, is a stigma and taboo around this, but today we're going to talk about like why there doesn't need to be and actually how it can be beneficial. So Kylie, for you, what do you feel like has been maybe some practices that you've done in the realm of kink and BDSM, and how do you feel like it's enhanced your life sexually or otherwise?
Okay, so I've practiced a lot of different aspects of BDSM. So I've explored my sadist side, my masochistic side, as well as my submissive and my dominant side. So like I said, I'm a switch. I can be any one that I want to be in that particular moment. So as far as exploration goes, I've done things as far as, dungeon play, prodding. I love like electricity play. I've pretty much basically done it all. I'm someone who loves exploring and seeing what I like or dislike. So yeah, it's just a huge spectrum for me, and I'm still, I obviously still.
There's always more to explore.
Explore, exactly.
Yeah, what do you feel like that exploration has brought to your life and your relationships?
Definitely, I would say I'm an open person, but it definitely has made me see things a lot I would say it's made me a lot more open-minded a person and unafraid to try new things and discover things sexually in my life. So it definitely has helped me explore myself more. I think it's pretty important, not only with exploring myself and my own boundaries, but also exploring like my partner as well. So,
yeah. Casey, what about you?
I've actually had the privilege of exploring my kinks through the industry. So I've done a lot of things that I wouldn't necessarily do or wouldn't have done on my own. Were all things that were within my comfort zone. But I think that it is a privilege to have done these things, and this is, why we're here today, is to kind of promote people to kind of push their limits and explore these things. But
and it sounds like the industry kind of gave you permission to like explore these things.
Not permission necessarily, but to do things that I wouldn't have naturally just been like, oh hey, let me grab some clothespins and put them all over my body and have some big ass dude slap the shit out of me. That's not something I would have been like, oh hey, let me go figure this one out. But it was a lot of fun. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. I've been on both ends of that as well. I've been on the receiving end as well as the giving end. And to be fair, I do practice a lot of BDSM. But more, and this is, I think, maybe everybody does this. A lot of people do this, and maybe they're not necessarily thinking, oh, I'm doing BDSM in the moment. Feels more vanilla for me, but like choking and hair pulling and making somebody gag on my dick, it's very dominating, and I can be very submissive as far as pegging or switching the roles up, and I feel like it translates over very well into our life, and kind of it allows us to be more open-minded people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a really great organization out there for folks who are maybe listening to this and being like, well, why would somebody be into that? Like I said, I think there's a stigma around folks who are interested in kink and BDSM, and there's this sort of miseducation around people thinking that if you're into this kind of stuff that you've had trauma or something's wrong with you, or why would you like that? But in fact, research shows that that's not really true. There's not really a correlation between those things, and there's a great organization called Tashra that does a lot of research around looking at folks who are interested in this, and it actually shows a lot of benefits. Some of the benefits that I see as a therapist, one is that it seems to really help folks better navigate consent. And so in most, maybe y'all can speak to this and how it's been in scenes and in your own personal life, but in kink and BDSM, it is really normalized to have a negotiation. I think a lot of folks who maybe don't practice kink and BDSM, they don't often have a sit down before they have sex to be like, well, what do you like? What do you not like? What's on the table? What's off limits? What is a hard limit for you, aka something you don't want to do? What is our safe word? How will I know if you're feeling good about something? And so kink and BDSM really emphasizes these pre, during, and after check-ins of what you need and want to make the experience more pleasurable for you. So it really helps people learn to express their desires a bit more, and to learn to negotiate, and to help people check in, and to make consent sexy. I think a lot of people, when they hear consent, they're like, oh, it ruins the mood, as opposed to it can be really hot to go through in BDSM what's called a yes, no, maybe list of what do you want to do? Like you said, Casey, are you down today to get clothespinned and slap the shit out of? And you're like, yes, absolutely. Or maybe it's not a day for that. How do you feel like it's maybe helped either of you be better at expressing what you need and want, and how to have a consent conversation?
That's a great point that you made about having the consent speech, because prior to even before I was even involved in kink or the BDSM world, that talk was rarely had. So up until that point, consent is huge in the BDSM world, and I did want to stress that fact again, because that talk is had before every single shoot, every say like a personal session or something you have with someone. But yeah, consent is huge in this realm, and that's definitely something that I want people to know. It's not something that you go into without speaking to your partner and understanding boundaries and what you're comfortable with and not comfortable with. So great point.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of people that need to kind of understand that consent is like the biggest part of having sex. I think going into sex, we want to all have a good time and not traumatize one another. I think also when like confronting somebody with something that you potentially want to do in a bedroom is also good to know. It's also good to know and keep in mind that not everybody may want to do the things that you want to do, and that's okay as well.
No surprise anal.
Yeah. So don't surprise anybody with
Please.
anal. No surprise fingers in the ass. It's always cool to talk about it, and the worst thing you can happen is just not having that part of sex. But there's many times that I've approached her with things that I thought she might have turned down, and instead we ended up having a really fun time.
Oh, yeah. I'm an open book. I love to try things. I want to see if I like it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's always good to ask.
100%. And if you don't ask, you won't get an answer.
Yeah, and for some people who are stimulated by like the mind and talking about things, like I said, I think some people are like, oh, the check-ins, like how can it be sexy, or this pulls me out of the mood. And maybe for some people it's hard to get out of their head, but for people who like to talk about this, I think like those consent dialogue negotiations can be like a really fun warm-up to get excited about things and be like, oh, I didn't know you were into that, like now it's on the table.
Foreplay.
Yeah, totally. Another benefit that I see for kink and BDSM is I really think it invites people to come back to a sense of like playfulness and creativity. I think as a lot of us, get older, we kind of can, especially in long-term relationships, can get really routine in sex or just in life. It's like we go to work, we do this thing, and things just feel too adult. And I know that I don't like to feel like an adult all the time, and I feel like kink and BDSM is a way to bring us back to play and pleasure and just being creative and kind of thinking outside the box. And so I see it really as an awesome outlet for people to be able to look at different parts of themselves and to really like take themselves on a play date. How do you feel like for you, Casey, that it's been like an area of play and just allowing you to explore and be adventurous?
I mean, I'm a very sexual person. That's probably... it's got it's high on a list of priorities for my sources of entertainment. So it's definitely a playground, and I think BDSM it kind of brings the dynamic to it. It's not just like one thing. It's not, oh, we're just fucking in missionary position. No, we're doing it all. Like I'm fucking her in missionary, she's fucking me in missionary. Like we're having a fun time. We're definitely playing on that ground.
Oh yeah, I constantly need stimulating. So, and again, like I don't like getting stuck into routine. So I love trying new things, and definitely, some days I'll be feeling more dominant. Other days I'll be more submissive. So we definitely have a lot of toys in our arsenal to kind of play with here. So there's a lot of different like dynamics that we can play into. So yeah.
What's your favorite way to play off screen?
Ooh, okay.
Well, we're very like, I always say this, and anytime I'm asked like, oh, what's your sexuality? Especially because of just the dynamic of who I am as a person, and some people consider us lesbian, some people can consider it gay, some people consider it straight. Who knows? Right.
So if no one is familiar with this, by the way, sorry. She's trans and I'm cis, or the term's called cis. So, but yeah, some people will categorize us as lesbians or whatever they want to categorize us as. We really don't mind whatever they consider us. We're quite fluid with everything that we do. So
I always like to say that sexuality is, for me at least, is fluid. I feel like for a lot of people it is as well. Meaning one day I might, you know, I feel like a top and I just want to dominate her. And then the next day I might, you know, I might just want to get fucked. And some days I'm feeling like both of them, you know? So I feel like it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun to explore all the different ways. And my favorite way to play off camera, it could just depend, ranging on the day, or if it's bringing another person in, or just the two of us, maybe having a vanilla day, or just fucking her in doggy style, which is like probably one of my favorite things, but it's probably what I'm feeling right now. But
excellent. I'm glad this conversation is making you want to fuck her in doggy style. That's great. We're on the right track.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah. I was feeling that before we started the cameras up.
Perfect. No, I think you hit a really great point there, which kind of like expands on what we were talking about, which I think kink and BDSM also allows people to kind of invite different parts of themselves to the table. I personally believe that we all have sort of like a dinner party of people within ourselves, you know, different roles, different narratives, just different parts of ourselves. And so kink and BDSM really gives permission to see what you feel like on the menu that day and see what you really want. So it's a great way to practice knowing yourself more, to get in touch with yourself. It really kind of forces yourself to look at things and be a little more like embodied and present with like, what do I want? What am I needing in this moment? Who do I want to be right now? And then to advocate for that and ask for that is also really great for helping folks communicate better. The last point I want to make before we have to start wrapping up on this topic is I think one way that kink and BDSM can also be therapeutic is that it can create corrective experiences. So even though I was saying before that just because you're into something, it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. It doesn't mean you've had trauma. So there doesn't need to be a why are you into this. I find a lot of times people get stuck on the why. And to me, that can come from a shaming place of like, well, if we figure out why and fix it, then you won't be into it. So I say this with an invitation that you don't need to know why you're into something as long as it's risk aware and consensual. Risk aware meaning that all sex has risks, but if you're aware of those risks and okay with it and it's consensual, then great. But kink and BDSM can actually be really corrective. And so I know a lot of folks who will do different kinds of play in kink and BDSM where they maybe have had a negative experience in the past, but kink and BDSM has allowed them to take ownership of this thing and to kind of play it out and redo it in a way that feels like a corrective experience for that person. So one example of this would be something called consensual non-consent. And this is basically an agreement of we are going to play that we're not consenting, but we've talked about it and it is consensual. But it's basically like rape fantasies. And so a lot of people have these. It can be really normal, especially if you have had trauma. And so I found that a lot of people, this is just an example of one way it can be corrective, is that they'll use kink and BDSM with a consensual person to be able to redo and have a corrective experience where they get to take ownership of the fantasy. They get to do it in a way that it is consensual. And then afterwards, they're like, whoa, I got to be in charge of this situation when there's been times when I wasn't in charge of the situation, and it can feel really therapeutic. Have either of you had any experiences like this where you feel like it's been a corrective experience for something that maybe in the past didn't feel good, but then you got to do it with a consenting, awesome partner and you were like, fuck yeah, I feel a lot better about this now?
Yeah, I feel like all the sex that I've had has like stemmed from like a good place. But us being lesbians, she doesn't have a dick. She can't always, you know. I mean, so there are a lot of
not a biological one.
That's where I was going. That's exactly where I was going. So we have actually, it's called
real cock.
It's called real cock, and it is basically it's a prosthetic penis.
Yeah, it's a prosthetic.
It's a lot more realistic than the ones that you would just like see on the market, and even the ones that are claiming to be realistic. So I feel like in a way that I can relate to having BDSM be corrective in a way like that and therapeutic is for our relationship in a way that Whereas I really like getting fucked, and I don't necessarily want a guy over my house all the time. You know, we could just whip that thing out, and we have a great time. And she does a wonderful job at better than most guys for most of the time. And yeah, it's amazing. It's therapeutic to be able to switch the positions up, and to get that from one person is exactly what I was looking for in life.
Love that. And it doesn't have to be as extreme as the example I was giving. For another corrective just example could be, let's say you don't feel aligned with the gender that you were assigned at birth, and maybe you haven't had areas in your life where you can explore the part of your identity that feels more real and aligned for you. And then in kink and BDSM, you were allowed to wear what you want, be the persona that you wanted, and have somebody who praised that. And that can be so healing and beautiful. And I think the last piece of this that I think can be really, there's so many other things and ways that I think kink and BDSM can be healing and therapeutic, but I think my most favorite one is aftercare. And so if you don't know what that is, this is basically something that's really been normalized in kink and BDSM. And so after people play in kink and BDSM, there's usually something called aftercare. And so when people play in kink and BDSM, it's often called a scene. And so during and after the scene, there's a time where it's just dedicated to care and tenderness and taking care of yourself, taking care of each other. This to me should be like just a basic tenet of all sex that people should have. But it's sort of been more emphasized in kink and BDSM. Sometimes I don't even want to have sex, but I just want the aftercare, just to have care, right? And so aftercare can look like, oh, now it'd be so nice to have a massage. I just want to be held and have you call me a good girl. I just want a glass of water. I just want to like lay here with a soft blanket and a plushie toy and watch SpongeBob, like whatever it is that your aftercare is. I think that's really something we can learn from kink and BDSM. Kylie, do you have a favorite type of aftercare after you're done being intimate that sort of helps you go back into the rest of your day?
So usually after I come, I just kind of want to lay there and just kind of, I guess, like absorb everything going on around me.
Yeah.
So I really like doing that. And I do like cuddling. I really do like cuddling after we have sex. So that, I would say that's probably my go-to. And then
yes, I love that.
I always get so tired after. I get so tired. I just kind of get hit with that, what is it? We call it the, we can't speak after we come.
It's called cum drunk.
I'm cum drunk after that, so I just kind of want to relax and cuddle with her. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just like savoring and being in the pleasure and just kind of like, savoring, it sounds like.
Yes.
I just like a towel being thrown at me. It's like, oh, hey, thanks. Now it's not leaking on the bed.
All right, so less care and more logistics. You're like, get this off of me.
She's like, give me a towel.
I need a towel. I need a towel and some sushi.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, basically. Yeah.
That's the aftercare I like.
Yeah.
Get these lights out of my fucking face.
Everyone's so different.
But that's the beauty of kink and BDSM, is that all your differences are welcome. Casey, Kylie, thank you so much for joining me to talk about the benefits of kink and BDSM. Obviously, there are lots more, but hopefully this gave you listeners an opportunity to think a little more about this and, check out what it can do for you, for yourself. Again, if you want to find maybe a little more like research on this topic, I would suggest checking out an organization called TASHRA, TASHRA. They have a lot of great resources about sort of the health benefits of kink and BDSM. Again, my name is Nicoletta, and I'm a sex therapist based in Los Angeles, and I was joined today by the awesome performers Kylie and Casey. Hope that you learned something, and come back and check out the rest of our videos if you want to learn more.
It was our pleasure. Thank you so much for having us on. I always love talking about kink, and it was great. I definitely learned some things as well today. So thank you so much, Nicoletta.
Yes, thank you so much for having us.
Yeah.